don't just go to the house. Turkeys are still being turkeys. They still live in the woods. They're still there all day long. Just because they quit gobbling doesn't mean they're all dead, doesn't mean they're gone. They're still there. You've got to be able to hunt them when they're not vocal. Go off what you know. Go set up where you know that those turkeys like to be and fill your tag. Okay? So... Hey guys, welcome back this week. Braden here with Spring Fever Custom Calls, and we're going to bring another tech tip here as we get gearing up, getting ready for season. Seasons are going to start opening up this next week in the south, and it is getting closer. I heard my first gobble for the year this morning, actually, on my way to work, so it's pretty exciting. I was pretty stoked about that, so I knew I was going to have a good day. So let's get right into this week's episode. What if you pull up to a spot and you think there's turkeys there, or you know that there's been turkeys there in the past? You pull up and it's one of those mornings that they just don't gobble. You get out, you scout, you don't hear anything. That could detour some of you from actually hunting that spot, when it could be one of those mornings where the birds just don't gobble. They're just not vocal, whether it's due to barometric pressure, whatever it may be with the weather. The turkeys are just tight-lipped and they don't say anything. My tip this week is solely focusing on hunt with all of your senses. Don't just don't rely on your ears to being your number one source for determining whether or not you're going to hunt there or how you hunt that piece of property. Okay? That is a major thing that we need to talk about. You don't want to avoid the sign that is there. So, last year in Michigan, I had the opportunity to go up there and hunt. It was late season, real late. It was I think it was May 18th. We went in there late, piece of public ground that we've never hunted before, and we ended up getting a chance at two different birds. We harvested one. Dad missed another one, and on a different day. But that hunt was successful, and both of those opportunities were given solely by the fact that we paid attention to the sign that was there. We did not hear a lot of gobbling a couple of the mornings, but we knew that there were turkeys in the area due to the sign, which ended up getting us a shot, couple shots during that hunting trip. So when we're looking at sign, don't ignore it, okay? Don't just rely on the sound. When we're looking for sign, there's all kinds of stuff that we need to focus on. One is obviously we're going to be looking for turkey tracks and turkey feathers, right? Those are probably the simplest forms that everybody probably knows. Okay, they relate. You can relate that to deer hunting and looking for tracks and trails and things like that. So we automatically, when we're going through, we need to be looking in soft terrain, soft dirt, mud, looking for imprints, looking for feathers. Okay, so I want to EP this tag that punched his first tag here in South Dakota, but we set up down here in this corner. It's really hard to see because of the sun. Anyway, we set up down here in this corner tonight. It's an evening hunt. Wind's blowing. It's 35-mile-an-hour gust. We set up down here in this corner because we thought birds would be crossing here, and I want to show you guys the tracks. See if I can flip this camera here. I don't know if you guys can see that, but that is all turkey tracks. And I mean, it is just tore up where they've been up in here. And we set up, and sure enough, called in one lone gobbler for him. But I've never seen this many tracks in one area before in my life. I mean, it is just unbelievable. In this scenario, last year when we was hunting South Dakota, it was a midday hunt. Nothing was gobbling. It was hot. It was late in the day. And the turkeys just really weren't vocal because it had gotten so hot, and it was, in the evening. And we had walked, we'd covered a lot of ground, and we finally came a spot that was just tore up. It was a sandy, gravelly area that I think those turkeys like to pick in, get those stones, those small pebbles, get it put in their crawl, whatever they do there. And I have never seen that many tracks before in my life. It was unbelievable. We ended up setting down there because there were so many turkey tracks. We hadn't heard of turkey gobble. We hadn't seen a turkey there. But we decided to set there because there were so many tracks. And we set up and started calling, and within an hour, EP shot that bird in the South Dakota Part 2 that you can jump over and check out from last year. He shot that bird with under an hour. We'd sat there less than an hour, and he had killed a great gobbler because we went off the sign. We went with what we know. And that is just a key factor. When you don't hear birds and you don't know where they're at, you don't know. And if you're just solely relying on your ears, you're extremely handicapped. We went with what we knew. We knew that there was a ton of sign. We knew that turkeys have been there, and there's been a lot of them, or they've been there a lot, one or the other. We sat down right there and ended up harvesting a bird. But not only that, let's take it to the next step. Looking for droppings, okay? If we can find areas where there's a lot of droppings in the area, that means they're probably spending quite a bit of time, okay? They're not, if you're just finding, one dropping and then and that's it, they're not spending a whole lot of time in that general area. If you're finding several mounts, then yeah, there could be a lot of birds that go through there in terms of numbers, or they're spending a lot more time, which is allowing that to build up, okay? So tracks, droppings, feathers. Other items are items like dust bowls, okay? So a dust bowl is where a turkey literally dusts themselves. It's almost, it's a way to cool them off and things like that, and they will get down in the dirt. They find, sandy areas where the dirt is broken up very, very well, and they get in there and they actually roll around, and flop over on their back, and it's almost like they're trying to scratch their back or whatever, and they are, covering themselves in that dust, and it will actually build, if they use that spot a lot, it will actually create that bowl in the dirt, okay? So if you start seeing a lot of tracks and you see a spot that is concave, it's dug out a little bit, then that is probably a dust bowl. It'll typically have feathers in it from where they're in there, really, raking at it, rolling around. It'll cause a pin feather or whatever to pop out every now and then, sometimes some bigger feathers. So looking for tracks, droppings, dust bowls, those are things that we need to keep in mind. The other big, really big sign is scratch, okay? And you hear people say, I found scratch or whatever. That is a spot, it's a location where turkeys are constantly picking at the ground. They're in there when they're feeding. Hens constantly through the day, gobblers, jakes, same thing. When they're not just walking around strutting, they're pawing at the ground. They're taking those long claws. They're scraping at the ground, and they're looking for grubs. They're looking for worms. They're looking for mushrooms. They're looking for bugs. You name it. Acorns. Things like that. They'll eat. Okay, grasshoppers, snakes. They eat all of that. So they're scraping at that ground, trying to peel that up. Now, as spring goes, it's going to become more greener. There's going to be more bugs. Sometimes that's a little bit harder to find, but you can always find scratch throughout the year, and when there's been several turkeys in that area because it is just tore up like crazy because of all of the scratch area. I mean, it's peeled back. The leaves will be peeled back into a pile, and it is literally bare dirt, and I'm talking about lots of it. It can cover, big areas in diameter where they've been in there scratching. And that is one of the key things that I look for. if I can find scratch, I know that there's turkeys there, and you can tell by the scratch, you know, you can tell about how old it is. If it's not fresh, if the dirt's not real fresh, if the leaves aren't, if the leaves are all dried and crispy on the other side where they've been flipped over, then it's been a few days. But if you can get in there and you can see that the dirt is still moist where they've scratched, the leaves are still moist where they flipped them over, you know that turkeys have been in that area really pretty recent. And turkeys are creatures of habit. Typically, you know, throughout the year they'll move to different spots, different regions, but day to day their pattern is really pretty close to the same. They like doing that. That's not always the case, but the majority of the time they're creatures of habit, and they want to go through and, you know, that same routine. So if you can find scratch, if you find an area that's just built up in scratch, you know, you will know that those turkeys have been there recently, and that's a spot that I am going to target for sure. Okay? Now, make sure you take all that into consideration. Don't overlook it. Don't get frustrated if you're not hearing gobbles, especially in those midday, you know, late afternoon. That's when you need to hone in on what you know. Then be sure you guys jump over to the website, springfevercustomcalls.com, and remember, put your next long beard on speed dial with a Spring Fever Custom Call. See you guys next week.